guys, it's Jacob from Stringbuzz here, stringbuzzworld.org being the music journalism site, links are in the description down below. And this is the final end of year thing which we will be doing, and it's called So 2016, A Year in Reflection. I originally posted this to stringbuzzworld.org, this original article which I'll be referring to, so I hope you enjoy. And I know it's been a little while since we posted YouTube videos, that's because we've had a bit of a Christmas break, both on the site as well as in YouTube as well. Just, I think it was kind of deserving. We put up over 120 articles in the last 2 months, just sort of really to prepare for this, and I think I'm done now. I've done the Christmas thing, I'm ready to get back into it. So I'm going to refer to the original article like I've already said, so I hope you enjoy. So as 2016 closes, we have been given a little amount of time just to reflect on what has gone on throughout this entire year. For me personally, perhaps not the greatest of years, and a lot of people sort of feel that way, but I'm hardly going to sweat over it. However, when it comes to music, the year has been quite conflicted, and I don't mean in a good way or in a bad way, really. There are areas which have been groundbreaking and unreal, but there have been others that have casted great shadows over the industry. The same shadows I don't really see evaporating when coming anytime soon, especially not in 2017. So I've really split them all into categories. So very simple categories as well, I'll add that. You have the good, you have the bad, you have the weird, and you have the ugly. So I think you get the point at this moment, so let's dive into it. So starting off with the good, we have independent music. This year we've had more exposure to independent music than basically since records began. There are now countless outlets to promote your music and get your sound out there, and people like us here at Stringbuzz, you've got people like NME, you've got even the Needle Drop and ARTV, all these people are listening. These people can find this music very easily now. This wealth of music that we can find at a click of a button was awe-inspiring when YouTube was first created about a decade ago, but now you have SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Spotify, Promoter, sponsored ads, and many, many more. That's just to name a few off the top of my head. Reverb Nation as well. And you've got all this stuff to really get your music out there, almost like little social networks, just to improve your networking as an independent artist. So you can have people from around the world listening to your music very easily now. When I did my independent project earlier in the year, I expected it just to be on, a bit local, but my biggest audience was in India, which is kind of crazy. So the accessibility now of independent music is now unparalleled, and I personally love it because independent music is my favourite type of music because it's got no boundaries. So moving on, we have experimental music. This year we've had some of the best experimental music basically since the 60s. I'll go out there and say that. When I look at the acts like Pliny, even Solange this year, and Alternate Function, I can smile and be bewildered by their approach. Also, this experimentation has started leaking back into the charts and into the mainstream, and when you can call mainstream somewhat experimental, it's a good time for music. I'm so intrigued to see where 2017 goes in the mainstream, because a lot of this experimental sort of locale sort of stuff is really getting into the charts, and the sales are proving that. It's matching the sales of some of the big guns, so it's really exciting to see. And then moving on to the final thing of the good, we have quality and consistency. I noticed when listening to a ton of new EPs and albums from emerging acts this year that the consistency of each track is at an all-time high. We got used to hearing a couple filler tracks or a couple bum tracks per record in 2015 and years before it, but this year each album has had maximum effort put into it to keep the quality high throughout from track to track. There's nothing you really want to skip anymore. Sure, there are exceptions to this, and some acts like Charlie Puth or someone like that who didn't really have it to begin with, but for me there has been a notable improvement by many groups and many artists in their consistency, and I think that's a very good thing. Moving on to the bad now, we have death. Everyone knows by now that we've had a nightmare year when it comes to the passing of influential figures, especially in the music industry. This week alone, this Christmas week alone, we've had two legends die in Rick Parfitt and George Michael. Obviously, Rick Parfitt was in Status Quo, George Michael in Wham, and his solo career. I'm sure you've heard of both of them. But this year, we've had the likes of Bowie, Lemmy, Leonard Cohen, Prince, K-Star, Pete Burns, and that's just scratching the surface of some people that have died in the music industry. That really is to name a few. I even said that in the article, that was just off of the top of my head. It's been nightmarish and has brought sadness to households around the world. No matter your music taste or your family's music taste, you will have been affected by at least the passing of one of these influential figures, and it's hardly surprising. Thoughts go out to families dealing with this, of course, and it's been a very tragic year when it comes to the passing of legendary icons in the music industry. Moving on to the second and the final part of the bad list, we have pop music. You know what I said earlier about experimentation leaking into the mainstream and charts? Yeah, well, this is basically the other stuff. I know everyone likes to rant about pop music and all that, but this year is the first first year I've genuinely felt angered by pop music. We've had acts like Zara Larsson and Camila Cabello hit the charts simply because we've been told that they're famous by the media, so hence now they are. They haven't actually done anything to get to that point, but they've been rammed so down our throats and promoted so, what's the best way of putting it, aggressively, that these people are famous anyway, and they're reaching the charts simply because of that. We've had some awful cliches ruin decent tracks throughout the year as well. These cliches are the things which have hurt me the most. Off of the top of my head, you have electro reggae beats. Major Lazer, a great example. Terrible reggae beat. Clean Bandit as well. They had the Christmas #1 with Rockabye. Terrible track using a terrible reggae electro beat from people who have no association with the culture whatsoever. Poor acoustic guitar production. Yeah, we've had terrible acoustic guitar sound. Again, Charlie Puth was the most notorious user of this terrible acoustic production, done on an iPhone of all things. Repetitive one-word vocal hooks. Look at Maroon 5, or rather the Adam Levine project as it should be known now, just using the same word over and over again. Zara Larsson again was another act. They used that Fifth Harmony, Rihanna. They both used these terrible one-word hooks, which were just so annoying to listen to. Then you have nursery rhyme song form. I bang about this basically every single song review, because just about every other song now doesn't even have a bridge or a pre-chorus. It's just literally verse, chorus, end. It's really simple stuff. A lot of electronic music has sort of dealt this big blow. I mean, look at the Chainsmokers, for example, have caused all electronic music now to just go down this very simplistic formula, and it's so difficult to listen to, just the same thing repeating over and over again. Nothing new or exciting, or no deviations in a single track. I mean, for example, Calvin Harris had My Way as the vocal hook, so that's just 2 words, used 75 times throughout verse, chorus in 4 minutes. It's just not enough. It's not enough effort's being put in there. Upwards of 3 features or more per song, which is even worse. I mean, we've got acts now. I mean, I don't know whether you saw the review. I don't know whether I put it up on the YouTube channel, but on the actual website we did a review of X-Ambassador's latest track, which featured Wiz Khalifa. There were another 2 country acts in there, and it was written by 28 people, had 5 producers, had upwards of 6 session musicians. You know, you're having upwards of 50 people involved in the making of one song, which is just, it's too much. Too many chefs spoil the broth, I think is the right saying for it. And this has to end when going into 2017. And the list goes on and on from there. I'm sure you can take your own personal thoughts on what's been wrong with pop music in general this year. And sure, it does sell, but we won't be listening to it in 2017, and temporary music made for a temporary money making process will not be remembered in a decade. Moving on to the weird now, we have Corey Feldman. And I guess this one's a little bit self-explanatory, so I don't really know what to say about him. I'll let you search him up yourself. Then we got dance trends. Now, dance trend music is out of control at the moment. We have taken this once fun and exciting trend way too far, atrociously so. Each year, usually, you'd have one song or so that just takes off, inspires a whole new dance move, a big trend. But this year, we've had practically hundreds of them. Usually, the songs from yesteryears weren't very good, but this year, the songs are flat out terrible. I mean, there were obviously songs made for Vines and literally made to I don't know, blow up in a viral sort of way. Not my sort of thing, really, and songs which you wouldn't even want to dance to in the first place. Literally, you'd only dance to it because they're telling you to dance to it. I mean, we've had some terrible minimalistic type dance tracks which have just been atrocious to listen to. And then the last thing we put in the weird are the actions of Kendrick Lamar and Kid Cudi. Now, you might think this is a bit more in detail than you would have thought. It's not really to do with them as people, but again, it's to do with their music. Now, Kid Cudi has released 2 tracks that were on our worst list, very high up on our worst list as well. 1 track that was on our best list, the most conflicted album of the year, which was half some of the best album of the year, the other half some of the worst album of the year, went through a mental rehabilitation process and come out the other side much better. And that's just, the last 3 months or so. He's had a roller coaster of a year. And I'm excited to see where he actually goes into next year, because I think towards the end of this year he put out some great material. So I guess you could say that's kind of weird what he's been through this year and how he's come out on the other side a bit better than he was, better going into 2016 he wrote a load of crap basically over the last 2 or 3 years or so, and he's actually come out a whole new artist, and I think that's exciting, but in a weird way. Moving on to Kendrick Lamar, he actually put out I think it was very overrated, but it was still a very solid album. B-side album in Untitled Unmastered, then followed it up with some awful features on some terrible tracks. I mean, take the Maroon 5 track it was on, for example, Don't Wanna Know, I think it was. Why is he even on this thing? He's a gold member rapper and shouldn't be anywhere near this sort of phoning in, money-making crap. He doesn't need it at this point, and I'm hoping for a better year next year for him, because I don't think he's had nearly as good as a year as one before, and yet he was my most anticipated artist of this year. Moving on to the ugly, now we have the ever-growing effects of piracy. I've pirated, you've pirated, everybody you've ever known has probably / will continue to pirate as long as we can get away with it. But the music industry is dying because of it, and I know that sounds like very severe, very dramatic, but from what I've heard from a lot of experts recently that I've gotten in touch with, they all sort of feel like the music industry is slowly withering away. We've seen huge bands tear up this year just because they couldn't make a standard living from their art. I mean, look at people like Fish Tank that broke up this week. They broke up because they just weren't making any money, and yet they were one of the biggest independent groups in the UK. As an independent act, you will not earn any money, and you can trust me on that. You won't earn anything until you build up an audience of, I'd say, at least 10,000 and have a contract that is paying you for what you are releasing. The venues don't exist anymore, especially in the UK. The ones that do don't pay, and your music can be stolen online at a click of a button. Due to piracy, the music industry has lost, and this will surprise you, an estimated $12.5 billion in 1 year, with over 70,000 US jobs alone being almost redundant from the illegal transactions. And this is just according to a Forbes survey, so it might not be the most definitive proof, but it is definitely in that ballpark of around 10 to $15 billion has been lost through piracy in music this year. I know it will only get worse, but it is actually getting a little bit worrying now. I've recently come into contact with Reed Studios and Stephen Sonic Studios. Stephen Sonic Studios, they produced Bros, Rick Astley, ABC, Go West, all people like that, and they both believe the exact same thing, that money just isn't in music anymore. And I know music isn't about the money, but unfortunately, if you take the money away from it altogether, what separates it as a career that you're going to want to put out quality anymore? And it's just a bit of a scary one. It's a bit of a philosophical one, I guess you could say. So yeah, I guess you could say this year hasn't been particularly amazing. In fact, it's been more strange than amazing or bad. Sure, we hope for much better next year, but we've already had a lot of decent stuff happen this year on the good side of things. So let's not counterbalance that and actually make the most of this exposure we're having to music at the moment and see where it goes. So here's to hoping, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around next time. Bye-bye.